Jeff, why don't you bring on the man himself to talk a little basketball?
Hey, Keith, how you doing?
I'm all right. It's like, now, what's up, fellas? How y'all doing?
We are
Well,
good. Keith Pompey, always fun to have you join us. Go ahead, Jeff.
Keith, you got to tell us, we're a week away from the deadline. Are the Sixers standing pat, or are they going to do something?
I think it depends on what they can get. Here's my thing. Like, we talk about James Harden. James Harden is a guy that, you go from being a great team to an NBA championship contending team. And that's the type of guy that you're willing to give up a lot for, right? But if there's a guy who you feel as if that maybe he's going to help us score 5 more points or 10 more points a game or 5 more points a game and really not making us a championship contender, I don't know if I'm willing to give up the assets needed to go get that person. So I think that, a lot of people are expecting a lot, but I feel like if the price isn't right, there are going to be some people that may be a little disappointed come Friday.
If you had to put out someone now, if you had to find a position that they needed to shore up most, would it be somebody like a point guard, like a Kyle Lowry, or would it be a power forward type guy?
I would think that the biggest need would be a point guard. I mean, because if you look at it right now, you have Ben Simmons, and then you say that, Seth Curry is actually, one of your primary ball handlers as well when Ben isn't playing. Then you have Shake Milton. But a lot of times lately, they've been going to Tobias Harris, who's your starting power forward, and having him as a point forward, so to speak. So the biggest need, I think, is a point guard, a Kyle Lowry type of person, someone like that, or maybe even a George Hill, or you need a guy who is going to be a secondary ball handler, and especially when you want to go small and you have Ben Simmons at the 5.
You mentioned Seth Curry in there. I saw your tweet earlier when you broke that he'll be out, I believe, two games with a sprained ankle. What's the status on him and also Joel Embiid with the knee injury? I think everybody's heart stopped when he got hurt at first, but sounded like nothing structural. What are you hearing about when he might be back on the court?
Now, they're saying for Joel, at the earliest 2 weeks. So the timeline for him to be shelved is like 2 to 3 weeks, right? I'm also hearing, like, when you have a bone bruise, you tend to think like that's something that could linger for a long time. But the Sixers are optimistic because they feel like he avoided serious injury, even with the bone bruise. Like, where is bruised at in that area, is not like the central part of the knee. So it's not like where there's going to be a lot of pressure on him, like jumping and all that stuff. So they feel optimistic that, he will be back 2 to 3 weeks and he'll be able to play, at a pretty high level when he gets back. Seth Curry he's going to be reevaluated. They play Sunday and Monday, and he's going to, they play Saturday and Sunday, and he's going to be reevaluated after the Knicks game, and then we'll see from there. So to me, I expect Seth to be back on the West Coast trip at one particular point. Embiid, I'm not 100% sure if we'll see him on that trip, but I think that he'll be back right afterwards.
You're about to follow that team on a West Coast trip, which is going to be really tough, especially without Joel Embiid. If you had to point to one factor, one X factor that's going to make this trip a success, what would it be?
You're going to laugh at me, right? Because we talked about this beforehand. Like, okay, so I think that in order for the Sixers to have success, I think that Furkan Korkmaz has to play at an extremely high level. And the reason why I'm pinpointing Furkan is because, for the most part, we know what Ben is going to do. We know what Tobias is going to do. Right now you're looking at it like Seth Curry is injured right now. Danny Green is the defensive leader. Shake Milton, he comes in and he gets buckets. I believe that in order for this team to be successful, that Furkan is going to have to continue the play that he's been playing. He has to make shots. He has to defend. He has to do a lot because there's going to be a time that one of those guys that we just talked about, they're going to struggle. They're going to have a down game. But Furkan has to be Mr. Consistent and come up with big shots in order for the Sixers to win.
All right. So, Jason, how did you feel about what he just said?
Look, I've been telling you that I thought that Furkan had to play. And I mean, look, you saw it the other night, Keith. He's the one that forced the overtime with the corner three that they had no business even going to overtime with the Bucks after they blew a 19-point lead. Was that just a team that was tired, that couldn't hold that lead after such a long win streak that they had? What did we see against Milwaukee the other night?
We saw a team that a team that, I'm not going to say they choked, but we saw a team that missed a golden opportunity. Now, the thing is, some people will say that they were tired, but then are we going to say the same thing about the New York Knicks the night before when the Sixers wore them down? What I saw was I was at the game, and the Milwaukee Bucks made a trade right before the game. Players were on the floor, on the court in the layup line, and then next thing you know, they leave and go to the locker room, right? And then all of a sudden, one guy comes out and he's hugging up all his teammates, and you're like, okay, what happened here? What happened? And all of a sudden, they do the national anthem, and you look at Milwaukee, and they look like a team that did not want to play in the first half. So to me, the Sixers are playing a team that's going. The Sixers were physically tired, but this team was emotionally drained, and they came back from a 19-point deficit and beat the Sixers. So I know everyone wants to give the Sixers, the excuse that they were tired, but at the same time, believe me, that the thing that the Bucks went through was also tiring mentally, and I don't want to hear it. You know what I mean? Like 19 points, you're up. Like you're up 19 points. You can't lose that game, especially with everything, at stake at that particular time. So, I'm not going to give them an excuse. And I'm not going to say they choked. I'm just going to say they blew a golden opportunity.
Is Doc starting to get more confidence in Matisse Thybulle? Seems like he's getting a little more time on the court, occasionally shooting the ball a little bit more. What are we seeing there?
I think Matisse is getting more confidence in his shot, which is enabling Doc to keep him out there more. Because let's face it, Matisse is, you can argue that Matisse is their best on-ball defender. I know that everybody talks about Ben Simmons, right? But when you look at per minute, and I'm not one of those per minute type of guys because no one plays like 48 minutes a game, right? So why do we do stats for that, right? Stuff like that. But when you look at it, Matisse has more success than Ben Simmons, like if you want to go that route. Matisse shuts down people. The problem was that offensively, he was a little hesitant to shoot. He didn't want to shoot the ball. With that being said, you can't play just one side of the ball, especially if you're a rotation guy and get an impact. So, Doc took his minutes away, but then all of a sudden he started hitting some threes and doing things, and now it's like Doc is leaving him out there more. So it's more or less Matisse did it, and Doc is rewarding him for it.
Well, as you reported today, though, Seth Curry's not going to be out for at least a couple games here. So does Matisse slide into that starting spot, or does it go to Furkan or somebody else?
For me personally, I think it probably might be a situational thing. But, the last couple games, Matisse he was the starting two guard, right? I think that'll work out well. Just because you have De'Aaron, at least for this game, tomorrow's game, they played De'Aaron Fox. De'Aaron Fox was just destroying the Sixers for 3 quarters the last time they played. In the fourth quarter, Doc put Matisse on him, and De'Aaron struggled in the fourth. So I like to say that I would bring him in and have him, start Matisse, have him guard De'Aaron, and then put Ben on Buddy Hield and let him use his length to prevent him from getting shots. So I think that for this one particular game, I'm riding with Matisse to be in the starting lineup.
They're playing as you mentioned, they're playing Sacramento tomorrow night. Is there anybody on this Sacramento Kings team that you think that this Daryl Morey and the team is scouting to see whether or not they're an option?
Well, they got a guy, Blanitza. I don't even want to say his first name because I know I'm a butcher it. But he's.
It's okay. Jason and I did that earlier today.
Oh, okay. So the thing with him is he's a guy who a lot of people may forget, but he said that he was going to sign with the Sixers, and next thing you know, like a week or so later, he decided that he wasn't. Maybe even less than that. He decided that he wasn't going to get a visa. He said Sixers said he couldn't get his visa. He had visa problems or something. Well, the next day, we find out that he signed with the Sacramento Kings. Now he's a guy that could help them if they want to go, the forward position. He could play the 4, he could play the 5. He would be a backup power forward, and he could play center at certain points. So he's the one that they can go after. The thing is, he hasn't been in the Kings rotation, but he would be a quality fit for the Sixers. He would be kind of sort of like an Ersan Ilyasova, for the Sixers. But that's the one guy that I can see that they would go after.
Keith, I did want to ask, what's the talk either with the Sixers or in the NBA? You saw 14 Atlanta Hawks players get vaccinated. Some of the New Orleans Pelicans players got vaccinated. The NBA is saying they'll relax some rules and give expanded benefits for players that are vaccinated. What's the talk among the teams about getting vaccinated? And look, I mean, you travel with them among reporters too.
I'm in the process of getting vaccinated. Well, right now I had my first vaccination yesterday, so I'll go back, in a couple of weeks. But, I think everyone wants to do it. I shouldn't say everyone. There are certain people who are leery of it, based on, the history, especially with, African Americans when the United States did a study and was injecting guys with syphilis and stuff like that, right? So there are some people who are a little leery of it. But at the same time, people that realize that this is a different time for the most part, and that they want to get vaccinated. Just so, let's face it, if you're around your teammates and stuff like that in the setting, you don't have to have as many restrictions. So I feel like this is something that's happening. I feel like a lot of people aren't talking about it. What I mean by the Atlanta Hawks mentioned it, the New Orleans Pelicans mentioned it. But this is still a sensitive situation because, here we are, we're having millionaire basketball players getting vaccinated, and then there's certain people still waiting for their parents or grandparents to get vaccinated. So it's one of those things where a lot of people aren't talking about it, but you have to believe if 2 teams did it, a lot of teams are doing it.
Wanted to ask too, not vaccine related, what's it like having fans back in the stadium? Even 3,100 fans seemed a lot louder than 3,100 fans in that arena the other night. What's that like?
It was great, man. I really enjoyed it because it gets to a point now this wasn't the first time that the Sixers played in front of fans. I mean, I want to say when they went to Orlando December the 31st, there were fans in the stands. When they went to the third game of the season, they went to Cleveland. There were fans in the stands. So, and there's been other games, I want to say 5 or 6 games on the road where there were fans in the stands. The good part is, Philadelphia fans are unique, right? I mean, it was when the other team comes out on the court, you hear the boos, and you're like, okay, I'm back in Philly. And then when they're announced, you hear the chants, right? The negative chants, I will say, right? So it's great. I mean, I kind of liked it. I enjoyed it. I felt like they brought a lot of energy, and it was, like I said, it was unique to Philadelphia than any other place. And I feel like the fans give the Sixers a huge home advantage. I mean, they really do. Now, on the downside of that, if you're a new 76er and your team is struggling, you have to know that the fans are going to start booing you too.
Yeah, but I mean, look, over the last couple seasons, there aren't many teams that have been better at home than the Sixers have been at home. It can only benefit them to have fans there as long as they're playing. Granted, as long as they're playing well, but they have been playing well. And again, going back to the Bucks game, the only reason they lost that game is because Seth Curry went down, and Joel Embiid wasn't playing. I mean, you throw those 2 guys in the lineup and they win, and that place is going bananas. I mean, it would be so much better if to have as many people in the stands as possible, don't you think?
Yeah, I agree. I mean, here's the thing. When they come back, what's it going to be, April the 4th? It's going to be their first home game, I believe, after this road trip. They're gonna probably have, what, they got 3,100 now. They're gonna have at least 5,000 people in there, at least. It may even be more, because that's when, they're expecting, for fewer restrictions, or they're going to, lessen the restrictions a little bit. So they're going to have more fans in there. And, I expect, once the playoffs come, there's going to be even more fans in the stands. So yeah, it's going to be electric. I'm telling you, I travel a lot of places, and there's nothing like going to a game in Philly, right? Because of the fans. It's kind of like the fans are part of the act. I mean, I know